Our topic this morning is perhaps an unusual one: how to receive spiritual power. And as usual in the Gita, Sri Krishna has the answer and tells us exactly how to do so. He says, "To those who meditate on me as their very own, their hearts ever united to me by incessant inward worship, I supply their deficiencies and make permanent their gains. Whenever anyone with a pure intention offers me even a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I accept his offering as symbolic of his love. Whatever action you perform with dispassion, whether eating or performing spiritual rites, making gifts in charity or in self-discipline, dedicate that action in offering to me. Keep your mind fixed on me. Be my devotee, thus becoming one with me and knowing me as your highest goal. You shall ever be my very own." Just some of the sweetest words in the Gita that he gives us there. Nature always has checks and balances, and so also does the spiritual path. If our goal is to reach the equator, we can't just keep going in one direction. When we've gone too far, we need to turn around. We see older people and perhaps ourselves that an attitude that has served us perfectly well for decades no longer helps us. Maybe it even harms us. And we need to know when to stop, when to change the direction to get back towards the equator. There's a saying, "Don't push the river," in the sense of don't keep using your ego to resist what is happening anyways. And learn to listen, to be receptive, to be flexible, to accept things the way they are, to adapt, to go with the flow. But even this is good up to a certain point. Continuing too far in that direction, we become passive, we become lazy. As Swamiji would sometimes say, don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. And so when do we assert our will? And what is the right kind of self-effort that brings to us God's power and His grace? And Krishna gave us the key here when he said, "Keep your mind fixed on me. Whatever action you perform, dedicate that action in offering to me." He didn't just say, "Worship me in meditation." He said to make every outward action a devotional offering. That's a pretty tall order. But this is the spiritual path. We want to change. We want to be transformed. In every temple and maybe even every religion, we make offerings. And yes, the offerings have sustained those temples throughout the centuries. But more importantly, for us as devotees, we grow. We grow when we humbly offer our physical energies, our seva, up to the divine. And because of that, then, when that is our attitude, then we can sit in meditation with that same attitude of giving. This is how we develop devotion. Rather than sitting in meditation to receive, think in terms of giving, of self-offering. By giving, we purify ourselves so that we can truly receive. And we attract to ourselves, through that effort, we attract God's power and God's grace. And Krishna reminded us, whenever anyone with a pure intention offers even a flower or a leaf, I accept his offering as symbolic of his love, because of that intention. Yoganandaji would insist to his disciples, you have to individually make love to God. Keep your mind at the spiritual eye. As you work, remember also that you are working for God and Guru. Always chant mentally, God and Guru, God and Guru. Many people, he said, come here to the ashram, and they pass their time in idle gossip and joking. Well, they won't get God. There are many rats and mice living in the canyon on this property also, but they aren't advancing spiritually. It isn't just being here that will get you to him. You have to make your own effort. Each one of you, in the end, stands alone before God. And so self-effort, but an effort that is a humble self-offering. In several places in America and in Europe, Ananda has what we call temples of light, this beautiful dome with ceramic blue tile roof. And one of those is located in the city of Seattle. And before this, for many years, they had their satsangs in a hall, in a rented commercial space, an office building. And they so much wanted to have more space for more activities. And they couldn't afford it, but they would visualize it. They had a photo of a temple like they would like to have, and they put it on their altar. And at the same time, there was a young couple, and they took a class there on the power of tithing. And they had just started their own business and decided to attract more success to it, that they would donate 10% of any profit they had to Ananda, because that was their Sangha. And at first there was no profit. In the first year they donated 4,000 rupees. But they continued working and they continued tithing. And within 5 years, they sold their business, which was a phone app, for $10 million. And that 1 million donation made it possible to build that beautiful temple. The point here is that it's helpful to give your efforts a focus, a goal. And it needs also to be a noble goal. Put that photo on your altar or on your mental altar. And then keep putting out energy. Keep asking God, is this your will? And give me direction. And I'm putting out energy, but you manifest what I really need. And ask God every step of the way. Ask him every day, and his plans may also change. You may understand them more and more. In in 1950, I believe, Yoganandaji told Swami Kriyananda that he planned to come to India, and that's why he wanted Swamiji to come with him. He made these plans, but they didn't come. They didn't happen that year. He tried again the next year and the year after that, and it never came to fruition. And then later, in 1958, Swamiji did come to India and tour and lecture for 4 years here. And then he had to go, and he felt that the job was unfinished, that his guru wanted him to come back somehow. But then other things happened. It took decades for him to establish the Sangha in America and Europe, and he felt that is also what his guru wanted. And then at a certain point, he asked his assistant to write a letter to, there were several, 4 or 5 publishers here in India that published Swamiji's books, to write a letter to those publishers and ask them, would they sponsor a lecture for Swamiji to give in India? And they all answered no. And he continued to write the same letter to the same publishers every year for 6 years, just to see what the answer was. It's rather puzzling because he knew what the answer was going to be already. And then in 2003, 50 years after his guru invited him to India, a couple of devotees here in India wrote to him and said, sort of how much people were really eager and ready for these teachings, and that he had a unique role to play in spreading Master's work here that only he could do, and begged him to come to India. And he looked at that, and he took that as the sign that he had been waiting for, that now the time was right. And he moved here, and the following month, Daya and I joined him, and we went directly from the airport here to India International Center, where Swamiji was giving his first public discourse. And the discourse was sponsored by 2 of those publishers. It's sort of like God has a plan, and it is a perfect plan. We just don't know how the pieces are all going to fit together. Once a devotee asked Swamiji, or said to Swamiji that, after practicing meditation for several years, I don't think I'm really growing. I don't think I'm changing or getting anywhere. And Swamiji said very strongly, of course you are. It's like we see ourselves too closely. We don't have perspective. We make judgments. We try to analyze ourselves. And we don't have God's view of the situation. And so the answer is to be patient, to do our little bit every day, as Lahiri Mahashaya said, banat banjai. Little by little, doing our bit every day, then the goal is reached in the end. Thank you.
There's a story in the Bible, you may have heard it before, but Jesus has been performing miracles. He's been, healing the lame, having the dumb speak, just miracles all over the place, and he's attracting quite a crowd now. And at one point, he's walking, and there's just people all around him, pressing him, trying to get something from him. They've heard of this man, and so his disciples are sort of trying to protect him, but the crowd is around, super crowded, just trying to walk through to wherever he's going to go give his next talk. And suddenly he stops and says, "Somebody touched me." And his disciples are looking at him like, everybody's touching you, this is a crowded place. Everybody's trying to get something from you. He said, no, I felt power go out of me. And there was a woman who had been very sick for 12 years. She'd been hemorrhaging for 12 years and had tried everything to heal herself, gone to doctors, remedies, anything, and it just nothing ever would work. She had lost hope, except now she had also heard of this master who was healing people. And she knew in her heart, she had this faith that he could heal her. And so while this whole jostling, suffocating crowd was, trying to elbow in and get near, who's this man that we've heard of? Who is this? But she was just from behind. She touched his robe and she was instantly healed. And he said, who touched me? And so when the disciples were like, everybody's touching you, she had to step up and she said, it was me, because she knew she had been healed. And she knew that it was she that he was asking about. So she told him, I've been very, very ill with this hemorrhaging for 12 years. I knew that if I could just touch your garment, touch your garment, I would be healed. And I was healed. And Jesus said to you, your faith has healed you. He wasn't mad at her for touching him. He said, your faith has healed you. So out of all those people, Jesus was emanating healing power. Like all the masters, he was one with God, always shining his power and light. But why didn't everybody else get healed? Why just her? Because she was open and receptive and focused on him. She hadn't had an interaction before, but she knew he was her master. She opened her heart to him. She had full faith. She had single focus, and she drew that power. So the masters are all one with God. They are channels of God to all of us. And so it's up to us to draw that power. Yogananda said, there was somebody in the ashram in Los Angeles, and Yogananda had given him a task to do, and the disciple thought it was a difficult task. And said, oh, Master, how can I do this without your blessings? And Master said, my blessings are there. God's blessings are there. It's your blessings that are lacking here. So that's part of the self-effort that we're talking about. And we can't be passive. We have to do everything we can to be able to pull that power. And we can't be boastful either. Like, well, I'm sure that I will receive the power. I'm certainly in the position to receive the power. I've done my meditation and my kriyas, and I've done everything he told me to do. So we can't be boastful either. So there is that balance. And as Keshava was also saying, Master was always emanating wisdom, light, love, power to his disciples. But if the disciples were not drawing on that power, they weren't receiving anything. Sister Gyanamata was Yogananda's foremost woman disciple. And she had a deep experience one time. I think it was in meditation. It might have also, I think it was some sort of spiritual phenomena experience that happened. And he was in another city. He wasn't even there. But when he came back and she had an opportunity to talk to him, she said, what was it? And he said, God through me. And she goes on to explain in her book, God Alone, which is a very, very good book. She goes on to explain that the guru is always a channel of God to the disciple, whether he's conscious of it or not. And we notice this also with Swami Kriyananda being around him. He would do things to develop, to create a work for Master. He'd create a new community. He'd write a new book. He would do so many different things with not any intention of now I am sharing light or now I'm sharing wisdom. But if people tuned into it, they could receive it and their lives would be changed. Sister Gyanamata also said in that book, God Alone, she said she would write letters of advice to sister disciples. And she said, grab hold of the Guru's robe and never let go. So she was using this example. Just grab hold and never let go, because he will be your liberation. He will be your strength and your power. So when Swami Kriyananda was building Ananda, I have a quote somewhere. He often drew on Yogananda's power. Swami Kriyananda writes, Master said that we are affiliated with an actual ray of divine power, transcending even the great blessings of a true teaching, of scientific meditation techniques, and the saintly example of a master. Master would say, you are connected with the divine power flowing through a line of self-realized masters. And when Swami was creating Ananda, he said, the more I tuned into the grace flowing from my Guru, the more my life flowed easily. When I tuned more into my own self-effort, like I'm the one who has to do this, then I found myself bogging down. When Keshava and I, when we moved to India, we were living all in Gurgaon, but at a certain point we started teaching classes in Delhi. And at a certain point we decided to take a leap and actually move residence to Delhi. And Sunil's there. He was there when that happened. There's a couple of, I'm trying to see who else was there when that happened. Not many. Hari was there. And it was a leap of faith. It was a leap. We had no idea what we were doing. Still we were kind of new foreigners, and we didn't have enough money for sure. But we just took this leap of faith that if we wanted to be channels also, because the Guru, even though they are channels of God, they also need channels. And so who are we? We are those channels. So we knew that we wanted to act as channels of our Guru in Delhi to help bring Master's ray, Master's light, his wisdom to devotees in Delhi. And so we didn't know what we were doing, but somehow or another we were able to draw that grace, draw the support of Hari and Sunil and many others. And somehow or another it all worked out. And so we were able to draw that grace, and it was a miracle. It was a miracle. Even the devotee that gave this house to be used as an ashram, she is also being a channel of the masters in Delhi and in India. And so that's what the gurus need, to also have willing hands, willing hearts, willing minds, to be able to channel their grace to others. That's how the guru's grace continues, how their power continues to come to the planet. So one time I was in a meeting, with Swami Kriyananda. There was one other person there. We were talking about television. Swami was on television for some time, and this was the executive of the channel. And we were talking about businessy kind of things. And suddenly I just felt this wave of bliss come over me. And I looked up at Swami, and he was looking at this other gentleman just talking away. And yet I just feel like, oh my God, Swami is showering bliss on me. And I knew what it was. And I had been around Swami a lot during our early days in India. Many of those type situations, many times just meditating with him, lots of different things. Never had experienced this before. And so I felt like I was one of the jostling crowds that was always around the master but not able to receive. And suddenly, who knows why, some great karma that suddenly I was able to receive. And I thought, he has been showering this all this time, and only now I'm able to receive. I couldn't understand it at all, and I still don't understand it. But this is what happens on the spiritual path. We learn how to meditate, we start doing our spiritual practices, we do some seva, we introspect, we study, we do all the things that we do on the spiritual path. to go deeper. But we want to go deeper so that we can get to the place where we have the faith and we have the receptivity to draw on that power that's always coming to us. And it is a battle. This is the battlefield of the ego versus the soul. The soul just wants the simplicity of being in the presence of light, of love, of power, of peace. That's what the soul wants. The ego wants everything else. And Maya is so strong. And so, just like that suffocating, jostling crowd, thoughts, desires, attachments, competition for our consciousness is constantly going on. We want everything, and yet the soul just wants the simplicity of God, wants to be focused on God. So that's how we draw that power. Lahiri Mahashaya said in the Autobiography of a Yogi, whoever utters with reverence the name of Babaji will draw an instant spiritual blessing. So how we utter with reverence Babaji's name, that's how we receive the blessing. And what it says in the Bible also of Jesus was, those who received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. So those who could receive him, he was able to give the power to become the sons of God, to become like them. And so that really is our job. That's what the path is about. To go deeper and deeper until we are able to open ourselves in receptivity and faith to receive that power. God bless you.